Here's something the automotive press isn't telling you. While everyone's been focused on the electric vehicle revolution, Mercedes-Benz has been quietly engineering something that could fundamentally reshape the luxury SUV hierarchy. The 2027 GLS isn't just another model year update. It's a calculated strike at the heart of what made Audi and BMW dominant in this segment for the past 15 years. And if you've been in the market for a full-size luxury SUV, or you're currently driving an X7 or Q8, what I'm about to share will completely change how you think about your next purchase decision. Because the dynamics that have defined this market since 2010 are about to shift in ways that most buyers haven't yet recognized. Let's establish some context here. For nearly 2 decades, the luxury SUV battle has been a three-way fight with relatively predictable winners in different categories. BMW owned the driving dynamics conversation. If you wanted an SUV that felt engaging on a back road, that delivered steering feedback and chassis balance that reminded you these vehicles share DNA with the 5 Series and 7 Series, you bought an X5 or X7. The numbers back this up. Through 2023, the X7 maintained a 23% share of the full-size luxury SUV segment in Europe and nearly 19% in North America. Those aren't accidental figures. They represent genuine product superiority in specific areas that matter to enthusiast drivers. Audi took a different approach, and it worked brilliantly for their customer base. The Quattro all-wheel drive system gave them credibility in markets where winter capability actually matters. But more importantly, Audi recognized before their competitors that luxury buyers in the 2020s wanted technology integration that felt seamless. The virtual cockpit, the MMI touch response system, the Matrix LED headlights that could illuminate the road while automatically shading other drivers. These weren't just features to check boxes on a specification sheet. They represented a fundamental understanding that successful professionals who grew up with personal computers and smartphones expected their $70,000 SUV to feel as intuitive as their iPhone. The Q7 and Q8 delivered that experience better than anyone else, and their market share reflected it. In Germany alone, Audi held 31% of the luxury SUV market through the first half of 2024. Mercedes had the heritage and the badge prestige, certainly. The three-pointed star still means something, especially in markets outside North America, where automotive hierarchy matters. But let's be honest about where the GLS stood 18 months ago. It was a competent luxury SUV that excelled at comfort and interior space, but it didn't dominate any particular category the way the X7 dominated driving dynamics or the Q8 dominated technology integration. It was the safe choice, the conservative choice, the choice that wouldn't surprise anyone at the country club, but wouldn't necessarily excite anyone either. Through 2023, the GLS held about 17% market share in the segment. Respectable, but third place. So what changed in Stuttgart? Here's where it gets interesting. And here's where we need to understand the strategic thinking that led to the 2027 GLS. Mercedes didn't just identify gaps in their own product. They identified fundamental shifts in what their target customer actually values. And their target customer, let's be clear, is you. Someone between 45 and 65, probably male, who has the financial means to purchase a vehicle in the $70,000 to $130,000 range. Someone who appreciates automotive heritage but isn't nostalgic about it. Someone who wants cutting-edge technology but doesn't want to feel like they're beta testing someone's software experiment. Mercedes conducted extensive customer clinics across 5 countries between late 2022 and mid-2023. They brought in current X7 owners, current Q8 owners, and yes, current GLS owners. They asked detailed questions about daily usage patterns, about what features got used regularly versus what features seemed impressive at purchase but never got touched again. They asked about pain points, about the little frustrations that don't show up in magazine comparison tests, but matter enormously over 3 years of ownership. And what they discovered wasn't that buyers wanted more of what BMW and Audi were already providing. They discovered that buyers were willing to sacrifice a small amount of what BMW and Audi did best if they could get something that did everything at 90%, while adding capabilities the competition wasn't even attempting. That insight drove every major decision about the 2027 GLS platform. Mercedes made the choice to stay with an evolution of their MRA2 platform, rather than waiting for a completely new architecture. This wasn't a cost-cutting move. It was a strategic decision that let them bring specific technologies to market 18 months earlier that a clean sheet design would have allowed. And those 18 months matter enormously in a market moving as fast as luxury SUVs are right now. Now let's talk about powertrains, because this is where Mercedes made their most aggressive move. The base GLS 450 uses the 3.0-liter inline-six with an integrated starter generator that produces 22 additional horsepower and 184 pound-feet of torque during acceleration. On paper, that's 382 total horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque. But here's what those numbers actually mean in real-world usage. That integrated starter generator eliminates turbo lag almost completely. When you're merging onto a highway, or you need to make a quick pass on a two-lane road, the electric assist fills in the power delivery exactly when the turbocharger is still spooling up. It's the kind of refinement you don't notice until you drive back-to-back with a conventional turbocharged engine, and then suddenly the conventional engine feels like it has a noticeable hesitation that you'd never really paid attention to before. The transmission is Mercedes' 9-speed automatic, but it's been specifically recalibrated for the mild hybrid system. Shift times are down by roughly 40 milliseconds compared to the 2024 GLS, which doesn't sound like much until you realize that's the difference between a shift feeling almost imperceptible and a shift being completely imperceptible. Mercedes engineers spent 18 months just on shift calibration, and it shows. In 5th gear to 6th gear transitions under part throttle, which is probably the most common shift scenario in daily driving, the torque interruption is basically undetectable. But the mild hybrid system does something else that's genuinely innovative. The 48-volt electrical architecture powers the water pump, the oil pump, the power steering, and the HVAC compressor. Why does this matter? Because all of those accessories traditionally run off the engine through a belt drive system. Every time the engine has to power the air conditioning compressor, it's losing power that could be going to the wheels. With the 48-volt system, those accessories run independently. The result is that the engine's output goes more directly to moving the vehicle. Mercedes estimates this improves real-world fuel economy by about 8% compared to a conventional system. That's the difference between 17 miles per gallon and 18.3 miles per gallon in mixed driving. Over a year, for someone driving 12,000 miles, that's about 90 gallons of fuel. At current premium fuel prices, that's $450 annually. Not revolutionary, but not nothing either. Now, the GLS 580e plug-in hybrid is where things get really interesting from an engineering standpoint. This uses the same 3.0-liter inline-six, but paired with a more powerful electric motor integrated into the transmission. Total system output is 516 horsepower and 553 pound-feet of torque. But more importantly, the battery pack is 31.2 kilowatt-hours, which gives you 54 miles of EPA estimated electric range. Why is this number significant? Because it's just enough to handle the majority of daily driving for most luxury SUV owners. If your daily commute is 25 miles each way, and you can charge at home overnight and at work during the day, you're basically running this 5,000-pound SUV on electricity for everything except weekend trips. The charging system supports both Level 2 AC charging and DC fast charging up to 60 kilowatts. That's not Tesla's supercharger speed, but it's fast enough that a 10 to 80% charge takes about 25 minutes at a compatible DC fast charger. For highway road trips, that means you can stop for lunch, plug in, and have enough charge to run the first 30 or 40 miles of the next leg in electric mode, which is exactly when the vehicle is least efficient anyway, as you're accelerating up to highway speeds. But here's the clever bit that Mercedes figured out. The plug-in hybrid system doesn't just provide electric driving capability. It completely transforms the vehicle's character. In electric mode, with the engine off, this 3-row SUV weighs 5,300 pounds. That's substantial mass to move around silently. But the electric motor's instant torque delivery means that even in pure electric mode, 0 to 30 acceleration is actually quicker than the GLS 450 with the engine running. Mercedes tuned the system so that the electric motor provides maximum torque from 0 RPM up to about 35 miles per hour, which is exactly the speed range where you're typically driving in urban environments or parking lots. The result is that the plug-in hybrid feels more responsive in daily driving than the standard model, despite weighing 400 pounds more. Let's compare this directly to what Audi and BMW are offering. The BMW X7 xDrive 40i uses a 3.0-liter inline-six producing 380 horsepower, but without any electrification. Fuel economy is EPA rated at 19 miles per gallon combined. The X7 xDrive 50i steps up to a 4.4-liter V8 with 523 horsepower, but drops to 17 miles per gallon combined. BMW doesn't currently offer a plug-in hybrid X7 in most markets. That's not an oversight. It's a philosophical decision that prioritizes traditional driving dynamics over efficiency. And for some buyers, that's absolutely the right priority. But for an increasing number of luxury SUV buyers, especially in European markets, where fuel costs are substantially higher and emissions regulations are tightening, that philosophical stance is starting to feel stubborn rather than principled. Audi's Q7 and Q8 approach this differently. The Q7 55 IE plug-in hybrid uses a 3.0-liter V6 paired with an electric motor for 375 total system horsepower. The battery is 17.9 kilowatt-hours, providing about 26 miles of electric range. That's barely enough for a one-way commute for most people, which means you're running the engine more often. Audi made the calculation that a smaller battery keeps weight down and maintains cargo space. That's defensible engineering, but it means the Q7 plug-in doesn't deliver the same daily electric driving capability that the GLS 580 does. When you're spending $90,000 on a vehicle, that difference in electric range translates to about $700 in annual fuel costs if you're commuting 40 miles round-trip daily. Over a typical 5-year ownership period, that's $3,500. Suddenly, the GLS's higher initial price starts to look less expensive from a total cost perspective. Now let's talk about four-wheel drive systems, because this is where the engineering gets sophisticated and the differences between these three manufacturers become really apparent. All three use fundamentally similar approaches with center differentials and torque vectoring, but the implementations vary in ways that affect real-world capability. Mercedes' 4MATIC system in the 2027 GLS uses a multi-plate wet clutch pack as the center differential. Under normal driving conditions, it sends roughly 60% of torque to the rear wheels, which helps with handling balance and gives the vehicle a slightly rear-biased character. When front-wheel slip is detected, the system can redirect up to 50% of torque forward. The response time is about 150 milliseconds, which is fast enough that you typically don't feel the wheels slip before the system intervenes. But more interestingly, Mercedes added what they call 4MATIC Plus, which incorporates individual wheel torque vectoring through selective braking. When you're cornering and the inside rear wheel starts to lose traction, the system applies brake pressure to that specific wheel, which redirects torque to the outside rear wheel. This tightens your line and reduces understeer. It's not as pure as a mechanical limited slip differential, but it's more flexible because the system can adjust the amount of braking force instantaneously based on dozens of sensor inputs. Compare this to BMW's xDrive system, which has a slightly different philosophy. BMW uses an electronically controlled multi-plate clutch, but their default torque split is closer to 40 front, 60 rear. This gives the X7 a more rear-wheel drive character, which enthusiasts appreciate. The system can redirect up to 100% of available torque to whichever axle has more grip, and the response time is slightly faster than Mercedes at about 130 milliseconds. BMW's advantage is in dynamic situations where you're actively trying to hustle the vehicle. On a winding mountain road, the xDrive system's rear bias means you can use throttle to rotate the vehicle through corners in ways that feel more engaging. But in truly slippery conditions, like a snowy parking lot or a muddy trail, the Mercedes system's more balanced default split actually works better for most drivers. Audi's Quattro takes yet another approach. The Q8 uses a center differential with a 40-40-20 default split, sending 40% of torque to the front axle, 40% to the rear, and keeping 20% in reserve to redirect as needed. This is more conservative than either Mercedes or BMW, which means it feels more planted and secure in adverse conditions, but less dynamic in sporty driving. Audi also incorporates torque vectoring, but they use a sport differential on the rear axle rather than brake-based vectoring. This can actively overdrive the outside rear wheel in corners, which is more effective than brake-based systems, but also more complex mechanically and more expensive to maintain long-term. So which system is best? That's entirely dependent on your priorities. If you're driving in Colorado or Montana and dealing with deep snow regularly, Audi's conservative approach is probably ideal. If you're taking your SUV on track days or you genuinely enjoy spirited driving on back roads, BMW's rear bias makes sense. But if you want a system that handles everything competently, without any particular weaknesses, Mercedes has threaded that needle effectively with the 2027 GLS. Let me shift gears here and talk about where Mercedes really pulled ahead, which is interior technology and the daily use experience. Because you can have the most sophisticated powertrain in the world, but if the interface frustrates you every time you try to adjust the climate control, you're going to resent the vehicle within 6 months of ownership. The 2027 GLS debuts the third-generation MBUX system with a 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster and a 14.4-inch central touchscreen. But the screen size isn't what matters. What matters is that Mercedes finally figured out the balance between touchscreen control and physical buttons. There are dedicated physical controls for volume, climate temperature, and drive mode selection. These are the three things you adjust most frequently while driving, and having to dig through touchscreen menus for them is genuinely dangerous and frustrating. Mercedes competitors have been slower to learn this lesson. The current generation BMW X7 uses the iDrive 8 system, which routes almost everything through the touchscreen or the rotary controller. It looks clean and minimalist, but when you're driving in bright sunlight and can't see the screen clearly, trying to adjust the temperature becomes an exercise in frustration. Audi's MMI touch response system in the Q8 is better, but they made the mistake of eliminating too many physical buttons in the name of clean design. The climate controls are on a secondary touchscreen below the main display, which means you're looking away from the road for longer than you should be. It's the kind of decision that looks great in press photos but creates irritation in daily use. The MBUX system's voice control is where Mercedes made genuine progress. The activation phrase is now just "Hey Mercedes," and the natural language processing has improved dramatically. You can say things like "I'm cold," and the system will raise the temperature, or "Find me a coffee shop," and it will search nearby locations. More impressively, you can string together complex commands. Navigate to home and play my road trip playlist, and set the temperature to 72 degrees works exactly as you'd expect. This sounds trivial until you're driving and your phone rings, and you need to adjust 3 different systems simultaneously. The voice control means you can do all of that without taking your hands off the wheel or your eyes off the road. The rear seat experience is where Mercedes made their most aggressive play against BMW and Audi. The GLS offers available executive rear seating with individual seats that recline up to 43.5 degrees. There are fold-down tables, wireless phone charging, dedicated climate controls, and an 11.6-inch entertainment screen for each outboard passenger. But here's what makes this different from the competition. Mercedes partnered with Burmester for the audio system, and in the top-tier configuration, you get a 30-speaker, 2,000-watt system with overhead speakers that create a genuine 3-dimensional soundstage. This isn't just marketing. The overhead speakers enable Dolby Atmos music playback, and if you're listening to properly mastered content, the spatial audio effect is legitimate. For someone who flies frequently on business trips and is familiar with the quality difference between standard headphones and good noise-canceling headphones, this system delivers that same level of improvement for in-car audio. BMW's approach to rear seat luxury in the X7 is different but equally well executed. Their available rear entertainment professional system uses 2 10.2-inch touchscreens with Blu-ray players and wireless headphone connectivity. The seats themselves, especially in the top-tier Excellence trim, might actually be more comfortable than Mercedes for long-distance travel. They have more adjustment range and slightly better lumbar support. But the overall technology integration doesn't feel as cohesive. You're using different systems for entertainment versus climate versus seat adjustment, where Mercedes has unified everything through the MBUX interface. Audi's Q8 rear seating is comfortable and well-appointed, but it doesn't offer the same level of executive configuration that Mercedes and BMW provide. Audi made the calculation that most Q8 buyers prioritize front seat space and cargo capacity over rear seat luxury. That's probably correct for their customer base, which trends slightly younger and is more likely to be carrying gear for outdoor activities than transporting business colleagues. But it does mean that if rear seat accommodation is a priority, particularly if you're sometimes chauffeur-driven or you're using this vehicle for airport transfers, the Audi isn't competing in the same category as the Mercedes and BMW. The ambient lighting situation is honestly a bit absurd but worth mentioning because it reflects the attention to detail that separates good luxury vehicles from great ones. The GLS offers 64-color ambient lighting with 10 different lighting themes. You can match the lighting to your mood or the time of day, and the system even has a vitality program that slowly cycles through different colors during long drives to help maintain alertness. Does this matter? Probably not objectively. But when you're driving home after a 14-hour workday and you set the lighting to a warm orange that makes the interior feel like your living room, there's genuine psychological comfort there. BMW offers similar lighting in the X7, but with fewer color options. Audi's approach is more subtle with fewer lighting zones but arguably better integration into the overall interior design aesthetic. Storage solutions and practical touches reveal a lot about how well manufacturers understand daily usage. The GLS has wireless charging pads in the front center console and in the rear center armrest. There are 6 USB-C ports throughout the cabin. The front door pockets are sized specifically to hold a 1-liter water bottle without interfering with the door closing. The center console has a removable partition, so you can configure the storage space based on what you're carrying. These are small details, but they're the kind of things that make a vehicle feel thoughtfully designed versus simply well-equipped. Let's talk about exterior design, because while this might seem superficial compared to powertrain engineering, design matters enormously for this demographic. When you're parking at a high-end restaurant or pulling up to a business meeting, the vehicle you arrive in makes a statement whether you want it to or not. The question is whether it's making the statement you intend. The 2027 GLS adopts Mercedes' latest design language with a more vertical grille that's reminiscent of the S-Class sedan. This is a deliberate choice to reinforce brand identity. When you see this vehicle in your rearview mirror, you immediately know it's a Mercedes before you see the badge. The grille is flanked by digital light headlights that use over 2.6 million micro mirrors to shape the light beam. In practical terms, this means the headlights can illuminate the road ahead while automatically creating shadow zones around oncoming traffic and vehicles ahead of you. You're running high beams effectively full-time, but you're not blinding other drivers. It's the kind of technology that seems like science fiction until you experience it, and then you wonder why every vehicle doesn't have it. The proportions are critical here. The GLS is 196 inches long, which is about 2 inches longer than the current X7 and about the same as the Q8. But the wheelbase is 121.1 inches, which gives it slightly better rear seat space than either competitor. The roof height is 74.4 inches, which is tall enough for easy entry and exit, but not so tall that it looks ungainly. Mercedes designers spent considerable time getting the character line along the doors exactly right. It's subtle enough that the vehicle doesn't look overdone, but pronounced enough that the body doesn't look slab-sided. The wheel options range from 20-inch to 23-inch diameter, and this is where you can see Mercedes trying to appeal to different market preferences. In European markets, the 21-inch wheel is most popular because it provides the best balance of appearance and ride quality. In North American markets, particularly the US, buyers tend to prefer the 22 or 23-inch wheels because they look more aggressive. Mercedes accommodates both preferences without compromising the fundamental design. Color availability is surprisingly important for luxury buyers. Mercedes offers 14 exterior colors, including 3 matte finishes. The matte manufacturer paints cost substantially more than standard colors, but they've become increasingly popular among buyers who want something distinctive. BMW offers similar customization through individual, and Audi offers it through exclusive.